abroad.
When builders thrive, innovation follows. But friction slows progress. Different tools, different standards, endless integration work. That's why SWE delivers a full decentralized stack. Everything working together from day one. Walrus for fast, verifiable data at scale. SWE NS for finding people and apps easily. Seal for data privacy and enforcing access. Nautilus for secure off-chain compute with on-chain trust. Deeploop for powering decentralized finance and delivering yield. And SWE, coordinating it all with speed and security at scale. No intermediaries, no patchwork. Just one stack for a new global economy. The SWE stack.
Hello everyone and welcome to Quantum Safe Communications, bridging QKD and Post-Quantum Cryptography. We'll begin in about 15 minutes. While waiting, feel free to sit back and relax in any of the seats provided and network with your fellow attendees. Please don't forget to fill out the registration forms available at the registration desk or scan the QR code flashed on the screen. Thank you. Welcome to our newly arrived attendees. Our official start time is in 5 minutes. So please find your seats, settle in, and ensure you've checked in via our registration link as we will be starting shortly. Good evening, everyone, and to Quantum Safe Communications, bridging QKD and Post-Quantum Cryptography, proudly organized by the Quantum Computing Society of the Philippines. I am Nico Lapus, and I will be your host for tonight's work event. But before we continue on to our event, let us call on Peniel Zafe to lead us in the opening prayer. And after the opening prayer, we will proceed with our Philippine national anthem and the subsequent official opening of our program. Peniel, take the lead.
Thank you. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty and ever living God, we thank you for the gift of life, for the opportunity to gather here today, and for the brilliant minds present in this room. We are grateful for the technology that connects us and the knowledge that empowers us to build a better future. As we embark on our event today, the Quantum Safe Communications, bridging QKD post-quantum cryptography, we ask for your guidance. Grant us clarity of mind to understand complex concepts, patience to navigate the challenges of design, and the creativity to innovate with purpose. Bless our esteemed speaker, Sir Ishan, as they share their expertise. May their words inspire us to push the boundaries of what is possible. We also pray for the spirit of collaboration. Let this be a space where we learn from one another, where we support our peers, and where we contribute to the growth of the quantum computing ecosystem here in the Philippines. May the work we do today, from the smallest quantum particles to its most complex applications within quantum computing, especially in today's digital age, be a testament to our dedication to excellence and service to humanity. We offer this day to you. Amen.
Please remain standing for the singing of the Philippine national anthem. To acknowledge our partners, DevCon, for this allowing us to use this space. It's very hard actually to get a space to have a meetup. So thank you very much, DevCon. Dom, thank you very much. And we have also Numbler.ai, IEEE, most of the people here in doing the streaming and helping us with this event are from IEEE. And we also have DIWA,
through the leadership of Attorney Josel Batapa Sige. And I guess that's it. So thank you very much for coming here. Maybe most of you haven't heard of the Quantum Computing Society of the Philippines yet, no? We have been around since 2017, and I'm surprised that only a few people know about us, even until now. So, mainly our mission is really to raise awareness about quantum computing. Initially, that was our mission, and then it became enabling the Philippines, building capacity so that we'll have a lot of quantum programmers in the future, no? Especially when the uh, fault-tolerant quantum computer is already available. And our society is a very open society, no? So our so actually we started outside Metro Manila, and then so from Visayas, Mindanao, and then we are now here in Luzon, Metro Manila. So for the QCSP, we really want to be not only open, uh, but also all around the Philippines as well. So we realized that there's just so many very good people outside Metro Manila. So we have to cater to all of them. And we have a very special guest tonight. He came from Singapore. No? He flew last night. And I'm really so happy that we were able to have Ishan here. He's a space engineer, and he also does quantum key distribution. So I hope that you will learn a lot from him, not only about quantum, but about his journey uh, as a space engineer and what he is now. So thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dr. Bobby Corpus, for those inspiring opening remarks. And now for the core of tonight's event. As classical computing moves closer to quantum supremacy, our legacy cryptographic systems face unprecedented vulnerabilities. To understand how we secure the digital landscape of tomorrow, we look to the integration of quantum key distribution and post-quantum cryptography. To guide us through this cutting-edge paradigm, we are privileged to feature an international leader in the quantum communications ecosystem. Mr. Ishan Basyal is the Director of Program Delivery at SpeQtral, where he bridges technical execution and commercial strategy in the field of quantum secure satellite communications. Trained as an aerospace engineer, he oversees the launch, integration, and operations of SpeQtral's QKD satellites. Prior to joining SpeQtral, Mr. Basyal served as a systems engineer for SES flagship O3BM power program, contributing to the development of next-generation high-throughput satellite systems. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Sir Ishan Basyal. Let's hear it for Sir Basyal.
Thank you for the kind introduction. And I'm very glad to be here. I think the last time I was in the Philippines, it was in Cebu, and I've always loved the participation from mostly like young people that want to like do something cool, like work and just the work ethic and the inspiration to at least learn, right? It's not common in most countries that you go to that like people are like, okay, it's 6 p.m. on a Thursday evening. I want to go listen to someone talk about what they're doing. So I think this is something that's always very inspiring to come to the Philippines. And I hope to share some details about what the technology is and what we are doing in Singapore at SpeQtral, and then like how, let's say, young people like yourselves could be involved in shaping this technology, which is still like in its infancy going forward. So please give me a show of hands if you know what QKD is or what quantum key distribution is. So I see one, two. Okay, so then let me just start with what exactly is QKD, right? Let's start with, okay. Okay. So classical cryptography is based on the fact that certain problems are very difficult for classical computers to solve, right? So one of them is prime factorization, where you can like multiply big prime numbers to get a larger number. However, like the inverse is not true because like a sequential computation, and it takes a very long time for the computer to be able to resolve the prime numbers. And this is the foundation of the digital security that we have right now. However, with quantum computers, they are extremely good at solving exactly this kind of problem, right? So now you're like looking at a future where all the way we do like encryption is going to be vulnerable. So how do you like try to prevent this future where like nothing is private anymore, right? So all the communications that you have, let's say you're a government, you have a military bases, you have the blueprints of your fighter jets that will fly for the next 30 years, 40 years. But now someone could just like make a copy of that or even like identify the vulnerabilities. So this is where like quantum key distribution comes into play. And within quantum key distribution, where we work is something called satellite-based quantum key distribution. The first question I'll ask again is, why do you think we need satellites? So one is application of satellite and GPS. So what are the reasons that we might need satellites for, let's say, distributing a key or in our application? Communication. So yeah, so that's right, right? So if you look at quantum, the most amount of news that you will always hear is almost always on quantum computing. Like Google broke, like Google 50 qubit quantum computer, like Majorana chip from Microsoft that was announced yesterday. So it's always quantum computing, right? But look at the entire quantum landscape is to break it down into three big pillars. So you could say that there is quantum computing, which is the most popular one. And the second part is quantum sensing. So now, like if you're following news, you always hear stuff such as like GPS denied environments, right? So now people are spoofing GPS. So there is or like quantum navigation and sensing. So you could use like quantum processes to actually navigate and like find your way around the world. Then the third part is quantum communications, and this is where we work, and we go so we're working with satellites in this domain just because the losses in free space are a lot lower than losses in fiber. So what's the property of quantum? Like how many people here know about Schrodinger's cat? Many people in the room, right? So the idea is that if you observe, so you have a box with a cat inside and a poison. So until you open the box, you do not know if the cat is alive or if she's dead. So that's the same property that we use to distribute, let's say, information to two parties, right? So, but now once you've opened the box, you have the answer, whether the cat is alive or dead. What that means is once you open the box, there is no superposition anymore, right? There's a defined state. So in the same way, if you are like trying to communicate using quantum, the problem is that like once you do a measurement, this property is lost, which means there is no uniqueness. Right? So it's either 0 or 1 when it's starting out, but once you've done a measurement, it's either 0 or 1. So it goes from quantum to classical domain. And since you cannot do the measurement, what this means is unlike data communications, where you send data, when data flows from your computer through the fiber, every few hundred like meters or every few kilometers where the signal is very weak, you understand what the signal is, and then you re-amplify it, and then you transmit it. But you cannot do that with quantum. So that's the main reason that we have satellites. And if you actually look at the orbit that we are in, right? So it's a sun synchronous orbit. So what that means I mean, even forget that. It's a polar orbit, which means as the satellite rotates and the Earth rotates underneath it, with one satellite, you can see the entire globe. And that way, like quantum, like especially when you're talking about distributing keys, it's essentially just like providing some information to certain parties. And as long as you have keys at your locations that you want to communicate, you never need to talk to the satellite again. So it's not real time. So with one satellite, you could pretty much cover the entire globe and you could have communications with anyone using the same channels that you have been using right now. So this is what we do. And in Singapore, like I think the main reason we're based out of Singapore is since 2008, Singapore has invested heavily in quantum technologies. And especially there's a protocol called Eckert 91. So this is this famous scientist who also used to be the director of CQT. So for people in the room who might know him. So he was in 2008 in Singapore, and then like they put a lot of money to build this entanglement kind of technology, and we spun out of the university back then. And in 2018, we launched our first satellite, demonstrated entanglement in orbit. And in 2025 November, we launched our first satellite with let me find. So yeah, actually, yeah, this slide is also interesting. So the first one was this 3U CubeSat, and then the quantum payload is just this bit here. Not sure if you guys can see, but see the metal part. And this is what it looks like. Right? So it's nothing but lasers and crystals. And then you are creating two entangled photons. One is going to this detector, the other one is going to this detector. So for the second satellite, what we have a telescope on board, and then we're downlinking one of the photons to the ground, then like doing measurements on that to come up with a key to encrypt the communication between any 2 points. So that's how at least things work at a very high level for satellite quantum key distribution. Any questions so far?
The single photon already, but you were mentioning this earlier. So when you communicate single photons, right, there's a probability for that photon to disappear, right? So how do you remedy that, or how do you go around it?
Okay. So yes, communication is always easy, right? So Bob is absolutely right. Like when we're sending single photons, it's not like we have a lot of photons to lose. You just have only one photon, so it is lost. That's why, like every channel, we always have a bit error rate. So what we do is that like the satellite is operating at let's say 200 megahertz. Then the losses just from the satellite to the ground are around 30 dBs. So for people that don't know dB, so 30 dB would be around a factor of 1,000. So you're sending like 200 megahertz on the ground now, you're receiving like 2 million, right? So that's the part like where you don't need to receive all of the photons that you're transmitting. But with the losses, you can still, and the loss will decrease if you have a larger aperture on board the satellite, or you have a larger telescope on the ground. So if you go around, right, in the Philippines, you have a lot of antennas. When we were at NTC this afternoon, there was a big antenna, right? And you see that. The idea is that the larger the antenna, the more signal you can capture, right? It's the same principle also in optics. The larger the telescope you have on the ground or the larger the telescope you have on board the satellite, you can focus the beam from the satellite, which means you need a smaller aperture on the ground, or you have a smaller aperture on the satellite and you have a bigger aperture on the ground. So this is just to close the link budget. But we can tolerate like factor of 1,000 loss as well and then rate the keys. And one thing to keep in mind, right? Like satellite is in a sun synchronous orbit. It's flying at like 7, 8 kilometers per second up. And then now you have to track the satellite throughout the sky, and you have to accurately point not only the ground station but also the satellite at the ground. So the problem is not trivial. That's why you don't see a lot of missions around the world that are attempting this, because it's not only a space problem, which is hard, but it's also a quantum problem. And you are like thermal cycling the satellite. You go from like sunlight to the dark side. It's like a 90-minute orbit. And now you have to track the satellite coming up. You have to point accurately, and you have to get the signal on the ground, and you have to come up with the key. So it's like a lot of problems that need to be solved. And that's what we're trying with the first satellite. So if you see, we call it a technology demonstrator. So the main objective of this mission is to prove that with this satellite you can receive the photons on the ground. And then the second satellite is 16 years a larger platform, and it's also a larger aperture on board the satellite. And this will have two different types of payloads. The first one is completely based on entanglement, and the second one is also called weak coherent photon pulse source. What this is, for people with some QKD background would know that it is a way to send single photons. So in entanglement, what you do is you shoot light into the crystal, and it's called spontaneous parametric tone conversion. So these are just like properties of the crystal that will split one photon into two photons, and then they are, by definition, they are like single level photons. So you don't need to worry about whether they are single photons or not. Versus for BB84, what you do is you usually take like a full laser, and then you attenuate the laser signal to go from like billions of photons to a single one. So this is a faster way to do QKD. However, the problem is if the implementation is not correct, right? The same, so you have, let's say, 1,000 photons that came out from the laser. You encoded some information in them. So all of them have the same, let's say, polarization, horizontal or vertical, right? Now you're attenuating it, but if your attenuation process is not good enough, then you might have 2 or 3 photons left instead of just one. And what that would mean is that if someone is trying to snoop in on your conversation, they might be able to capture one of the photons which you would not know about. Then they could have the same answer as you. And this is one of the risks of, let's say, BB84 type of protocol. And then, but for entanglement, this risk disappears. And I think that's one of the benefits, and that's where we have done a lot of research. And that's where the heritage lies. But we also built like the BB84 type payloads, and that will be launched in the next mission. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm really curious po about because we talk about having sorry, I will speak more English. We talk about having a incorrect orientation of po. Am I correct? Tapos we solve it through entanglement. Like para like how entanglement was able to solve this kind of, or was it talking more about the one who's it's dropping on the conversation? Oh, okay. So we're not particularly talking about the photon itself. We're just talking about those trying to eavesdrop po. I'm wondering if if you in the if the entanglement solves po yung in the quantum error correction. Is that what we're talking po about?
So maybe that was not super clear. The idea is that what you want for security is single photons for you to do your measurements, right? With if you have a highly powerful laser and you're attenuating the signal, you cannot be 100% sure that you have eliminated all the photons, right? So you could have like 2 or 3 photons of the same polarization. So we use polarization encoding for our communications. However, for entanglement, since the property of entanglement is that you are creating twin photons, and twins by definition are just unique, right? So you'll not have like 4 of the same photons. You'll just have like 2 photons that are just unique, and they have split from a single photon into 2. What that means is that you can be guaranteed that there is no third photon. So this gives you like some additional security. And one other application of entanglement is when you have quantum computers and you want to like entangle two different quantum computers, right? Then you need entanglement. With BB84, just like attenuating the lasers, there is no way to entangle two quantum computers. So this is applications in quantum networking and like things beyond just like key distribution.
I wonder what's the implication if there's a third photon.
The implication would be that, let's say, I'm sending two letters, right? So let's say Bobby is sending one letter to you and one letter to me with a secret. Now, if you actually send three letters, you received one, I received the other one, then there is no guarantee that someone else that wants to snoop on our conversation received the third letter, right? So that's the thing. So you want to make sure that only the two parties that want to receive the keys have the keys.
Thank
That's
you.
okay. Any other questions? Okay. So since we have some foundation of quantum distribution, I hope now I can go into some of the details. I think we covered about like signal losses where satellites are needed, right? Now the question is, how do we implement a network? Because the value of a network is when you have like different connected nodes, right? It's in classical networking, it's everywhere that like I could have the most secure communications, but if I cannot talk to anyone else, there is zero value in my network. So what's happening around the world is that there are, so I think like the most interesting graph, like chart slide would be this one. So this is China. They're the absolute world leaders in quantum distribution. They have launched two satellites, and this is actually the fiber QKD node. And this spans over 10,000 kilometers. So which shows you the level of commitment the Chinese have put into this technology, right? And how they're trying to expand the network, how they're trying to secure all the communications that they have. And they're not just relying on software. They're not relying just on PQC. They're relying on actual hardware-based solutions to make sure that no one can actually snoop in their data. And even if they snoop, they cannot understand what was being sent, right? So they are the absolute leaders. They have tried what we are trying. Then in the UK, like British Telecom. So for people in the room who ask a role for like what does a telco have to play a role, how does the science organizations play a role? So you can see that in Europe, there's an initiative from the European Space Agency. So that could be the Space Agency in Singapore. BT could be Globe Telecom, right? So it's just like all the infrastructure actors and the government agency need to play a part to roll out this network. Otherwise, this will not be a very successful program because a commercial company will only roll it out to locations where it's profitable for them, not necessarily where it's like just good for the society or something, right? So in Singapore, what we have done is what we call a national quantum safe network. And since quantum states are distance limited, what we need to do is that we create a fiber QKD network or free space line of sight communication network within a metropolitan area. But then between metropolitan areas, like within the metropolitan areas, there is more traffic within the nodes within the metropolitan area, right? But think of it, one analogy you could think of is you talk to your friends that are in Manila a lot more than, let's say, your parents who might reside in Cebu, right? So the communication, the amount of communication that you have, and for older people in the room like me, it's more like the international calls versus local calls. You make more local calls than international calls. So in the same way, the way we see the global network evolving is, let's say South Korea is connecting the government networks. They will have their embassies abroad or their missions abroad. So then they will connect that long distance using the satellite QKD portion. But within locations that are within a metropolitan area, it will almost all be using fiber QKD or line of sight QKD. And that's what we rolled out in Singapore. We have like 3 nodes. We are like running test beds also with, let's say, the Central Bank of Singapore had run a pilot with 5 commercial banks to see what the use cases would be. And there is a report that you can find online. Like it's in one of the slides. So you can just go and look at MAS report on QKD if it's of interest to you on like how this technology, which seems a bit far away, is already being trialed and like experimented on. So then I will now go to talk about the company, which you might have already figured. We spun out of Center for Quantum Technologies. We have launched 2 satellites. The first one was this one, the 3U satellite, and then this was from the last mission in November. And we're involved in just some missions from ESA, the European Space Agency. We in Singapore, we're like rolling out the fiber QKD network. And currently we have like 3 campaigns running, one in Tenerife, and then one in the UK and one in Singapore to validate the satellites that we just launched. I think this is covered. And this is just the timeline. I apologize. I think some of the images probably didn't render properly. But yeah, you can see the history, right? Like it takes some time to like learn this technology and then like move forwards in demonstrating it. And to just give you an idea, like we did an analysis on how long QKD missions have taken around the world. So if you actually went online, then you could see initiatives such as Eagle One, you could see initiatives such as like KeySat, and the average duration of a mission, if you're to start from scratch, is around like 6 to 7 years. So for people in the room that like will be talking to like policy makers or like people in the government that want to have something, if you wanted to start from scratch, it's a very long journey. So maybe like trying to find like partners is a more beneficial way, because you not only need to like build it, you also need to have the talent to do it. And I think that's where I think some collaboration between let's say ASEAN countries or some of that could come into play. Yeah, this is our CTO. He was the PI, and after the launch, like just before the launch of the satellite, that's when the company was created. And this is the mission patch. Not sure how many of you can get the joke here, but it's called spooky. Maybe the physics nerds in the room. So because the deal was that Einstein didn't believe in quantum, right? He didn't believe in entanglement. So it's a spooky action at a distance. And that's why you have Einstein being scared of the 2 entangled photons here. So, so now the question is, okay, you're building all this technology as a private company. So what's next, right? Do we need to commercialize it? And we have to like lay down a network around the world so that way at least we can fund our future research. So what we would like to do is, again, yeah, the images have not rendered properly, but this is where we are right now. So come like August, we will be doing a demonstration between Singapore and Luxembourg as part of the European Space Agency project. We are a non-European Space Agency country, but our satellite was up and we are part of a project where we have provided the quantum receiver to them and also our satellite capacity to demonstrate. So this shows you that even though we don't meet the criteria for an ESA member state, there is still interest in this technology that people are saying, okay, we're willing to pay a bit of money and work with you so that at least we can start learning about this technology. So this is where we are right now. Then this is where we will be about in 2 years' time, where we have multiple satellites. So the idea is that with one satellite in sun-synchronous orbit, the satellite goes around the Earth 15 times, right? But your satellite comes over Manila, it might be cloudy. So then you have not received your keys. So it's a problem with optical communications that will also apply to laser comms. And even in RF, there is something called rain fade. When you have, like, let's say, RF communication satellite at, let's say, a KU, KE band, which is like higher frequencies, then if there is rain, if there is cloud, then the performance of the link degrades. So you go from like tens of megabits per second to maybe like few kilobits. And with optical, like you lose everything, right? So the idea is that we would have quite a few satellites that are flying around. So even if you missed seeing the satellite, then you get to see the other satellite. So that way you at least have a continuous operation of some sort. So you can decide on your network requirements, how many keys I need at this node. So Manila talks a lot with Cebu, so maybe like we prioritize these two networks to distribute the keys. So this is what we want to come up with, because there is no blueprint that exists right now. If you were to tell me, hey, give me a service level agreement for this service, like for QKD, like it's not only us, no one in the world can provide you with a SLA right now. So that's where we plan to be with commercial demonstrator. And finally, where we want to be is something called double downlink entanglement distribution. So this is what I was trying to explain earlier, is that with double downlink, the satellite could be built by the Chinese, but since it's created these twins and they have both been sent to the two communicating parties, the US military could use the satellite built by the Chinese. So the idea is that you don't need to trust even the person that made the satellite or is providing the service. And this will have applications not necessarily just for quantum key distribution, but also for like quantum networking, entanglement swap. So you guys can just like go home and start reading up on it, because they're all like cool sci-fi things that might interest you to just like spend some time. So that's where we want to be. The payload that we have is capable of like downlinking to two locations. But right now, we are flying at a lower orbital altitude. So from around 510 kilometers, at one time, you can only see 2,000 kilometers across. So what that means is that communication even between, let's say, Bangkok and Singapore might not be possible. So that's why like we're not doing a quantum networking or like entanglement swap right now, but that's in the roadmap. And we'd probably go to like maybe 8,000 or even geostationary orbit to be able to do it. And there are principles how you could use satellites in orbit just using optics to increase the range. But it needs some money, and like I think we'll potentially do it in the near future. Yeah, then this is just a description of the National Quantum Safe Networks. If these things are rendered properly, then you will see the nodes that are within Singapore, and one of them is the ground station that can connect to the satellite. So then the ground station will receive keys from the satellite, pass it around to the nodes that need to talk to the counterpart some like distance very far away. And then you could have like fully encrypted quantum safe communication between two locations. Any questions? I see some confused faces in the back. So no? Okay. So yeah, if you're interested, so this is the technical report. So you could just go and see what was done. And essentially, like for us, the way to understand it is, if you think about it, right, like which organization would have the highest need for ultra secure communications? Anyone wants to answer that?
I think like banking would be like the biggest like need for it.
Banking is one. One thing I would say is that like banking, sometimes the need for ultra secure data for them, most of their like transactions and everything, unless you're a Swiss bank and you have to hide money from different countries, right? The lifetime of that data is not very long, because most of the transactions would be like mergers and acquisitions or something. So maybe like 6 months, 1 year, right? But then let's say you're a pharmaceutical company that has a drug that you have, like, let's say I've done some research. You have to secure the data until like, so your competitors cannot copy, right? You have like the patent. If you went public and you like did the patenting, then everybody can use it, but you have protection for 20 years. But if you have discovered something that you want to protect for a much longer time, there are like different ways to do it. So it would be, let's say, government, the military, financial services institutions like banking, and also like companies that rely on protecting the data for very long, right? So I mean, some people say that like the formula for Coke Nobody knows they say that, right? So if you wanted to discover the formula for Coke, like just flying around the internet, then there is no value in that. So I think like for any entity that has a need for data that has a very long shelf life that needs to be protected, then that's where these things come in. Yeah, and this is again just how the network would look like. The satellite would fly over the US. Let me go to this slide. So this is how the trusted node satellite works in operation. So the satellite flies over Manila, delivers key A, right? The ground station in Manila has key A, satellite has key A. So that's why in the first iteration, you have to trust the satellite. So maybe Philippines trust Singapore and you could use the satellite. Otherwise, like you would want to have a satellite of your own, especially like the military defense, right? So the satellite then flies over Singapore and generates key B. So once these two keys are generated, and let's say Manila wants to talk to Singapore, then they would satellite, like I want to talk to Singapore. Can you give me the key that I could use? So then the way it would work is that the satellite sends you an XOR of the two keys, which can be broadcast in public, right? And then you use that, or uses a user own key, you encrypt it, it send the data, then a Singapore that has received the XOR can resolve the key that was used to encode the information. Then that way, like you're sharing the keys between different parties. And with the double downlink satellite, this is the problem that we want to solve, is you don't need to have this additional step of just exchanging the keys. You could just have like the satellite provided to the two parties at the same time, which is not possible right now because the satellite is flying in a quite low orbital altitude. But this is like where we want to be in the next few years. So then I think how many of you know what post-quantum cryptography is? We talked about quantum key distribution. Now the question is post-quantum cryptography. Would you want to explain? No? So there are like two, let's say, big streams of work that have been carried out. So one is QKD, where the Chinese are leading everyone. Then the other initiative was on post-quantum cryptography. And this was the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US that led this effort, which was like an open call for everyone to come up with problems that would be difficult for quantum computers to solve. Right? We talked about how classical computers cannot do prime factorization, for example. In the same way, there are problems that are difficult for a quantum computer. So that is one stream where a lot of work has been done. They have like identity shortlisted the candidates, like you can find these open source algorithms. Now the task is implementing it in their networks. So if you use an iPhone, I think iPhone already uses like PQC for iMessages. So it's being like rolled out also by like the big cloud providers and everyone, right? So that is one. Because for quantum key distribution, you need physical hardware versus post-quantum cryptography is just like a software-based system. So it's easier to implement, easier to roll out. So for us, the way we see it is for most highly secure data that goes between data centers or like big backbone, right? Between data centers to data centers, or like from a server room in a government entity to its branch office, like let's do its embassy in another country. We see that being encrypted with quantum key distribution. But then from that server or to your phone, we see that data being encrypted with PQC. So both of them are complementary. And that will, for us, that's how the world is going to look like. Because one thing with PQC, if you're following the news, was that there are four big candidates. And those four candidates, nothing had been broken for, I think, about 4 or 5 years. Then one mathematician with a simple laptop broke one of the algorithms in 45 minutes. So then it went from 4 to 3, right? So now the question that you're like banking on is, okay, PQC is good for now, but let's say in the near future, maybe there's a brilliant person, maybe one person in this room comes up with a way to finds a vulnerability and then has an implementation, right? And it did not even require a quantum computer. It was just like a simple laptop this person used. So that's why with PQC, it's easier to implement. You can like do last mile connections. You can have your phone. You can have everything encrypted. However, there is this vulnerability that maybe what you are encrypting right now is not safe into the future. So, but with QKD, you don't have that risk because if implementation is done correctly, then like unless the laws of quantum physics change, your data is secure. So that's why like it's for high value data with a long shelf life. That's why the governments, military, defense, banking would be the institutions that would be very interested in this kind of solutions. So this is just a summary of what I said. So yeah, I think this is what I was trying to highlight is that like there is no long-term guarantee, but it's cheaper, it's easier to implement, and it at least gives you protection in the short term. So I think absolutely like it will be implemented already. It should be implemented to almost everyone, and like in the EU, in the US, I think the mandate is like by 2030 everything has to migrate to quantum safe. So these things are happening, and I think Philippines will also embark on this journey soon. I hope. Yeah. Then this is just a summary of our products. So to transmit quantum keys or like quantum like qubits down, what you need is a telescope because the way we use photons. So these are all like 1U CubeSat form factor things. So this is for the first satellite. Then you need a receiver on the ground, which for us, like it goes to the back of the telescope. But this is something that let's say you have a telescope or an observatory in the Philippines, and if the wavelengths of the telescope are compatible, then you could just bring a quantum receiver, plug it to the telescope, and then you would be able to talk to our satellites. So this is how things look. And in Singapore, I have a picture of our ground station where we're like tracking the satellites and everything. And then yeah, this is just an overview of what we have built so far, what we have deployed. And this is that we have a manufacturer, we have, let's say, complete design, but we have not manufactured one yet. But this is more for like portable requirements. So this is mostly for the military. If you're like deploying in a remote location where you still want to have ultra secure communications, right? So this would be a server rack where you have like your edge computing, your whatnot, and then you have a telescope that can talk to the satellites, and then you can take it anywhere because for military the requirements of the location also do change unless you are at a big base. But if you are like in a conflict area, we see a lot of interest for this, mostly in the countries that are actively going through a conflict right now. So we've seen a lot of interest on this. And yeah, this is just more of a blow up of what it was. And yeah, this is the telescope in Singapore. So this is what we're using to talk to the satellite right now. And this is a 60 centimeter aperture telescope. This is just like a guiding laser to do the pointing. And like I mentioned earlier, right, the satellite is flying at insane amounts of speed, and you need to be able to track it throughout the sky. So this is just like a few things that we had to do to commission the entire system. Yeah, and these are just an overview. I think not a lot of interest here. And if you actually recognize some of the names, you can see like big satellite operators are our partners because I think everyone sees a value in adding a quantum communications layer on top. So we're working with most of the big players, mostly in Europe, because Europe has this big program called EuroQCI, which is like European Quantum Communications Infrastructure, where they have actually spent 110 million euros. So they put it out as a grant for 26 ground stations within Europe. Then they have this Eagle One program, which is around 130, 150 million euro program. And then they also recently had a call for like smaller, cheaper QKD satellites. So they're going all in, like China, to build out this entire network within Europe. I think that's it. So, yeah. Any questions? Okay.
I'm really curious about these three things. Like, first of all, how was the idea able to originate? What's the origination of the idea? Second, what are the major challenges that you created in this kind of? What are the major challenges that you were able to enter in creation of this kind of devices, software and hardware? And lastly, I kind of forgot. I'll just have to.
Okay, so I was not sure if you noticed in the slides, but most of the protocols for QKD are called BB84, BB92, E91, right? So the number at the back is the year they were formulated, these protocols. So BB84 was even before my time. So I think we're just taking those protocols and like trying to implement. So then, if you remember the slide where we showed the journey of SpeQtral, right? It started in like 2011, 2012, when the idea was to miniaturize the payloads into a small form factor. And the main reason for that was the launch costs at that time were quite high. I think launching 1 kilogram to space at that time cost around $25,000 versus like with SpaceX now it's around $6,500. So, and the cost of SpaceX has kept increasing every year. So they went from like 4,500, 5,000 in 2022, and every year they're increasing $500. And without any competition and their Starship that needs to be funded, they will keep increasing the price. So that's why the idea was to go to a miniaturized payload. And that comes with a lot of problems. So space is harsh, right? So because of a few reasons, there is no atmosphere, right? So there is no convectional cooling. And even conduction only works as long as you have like good interfaces. So let's say you took this cup and now you put it into another plate. And let's say if there is a small gap, right? There is no conduction happening. So all the heat radiation only happens through, all the heat happens through radiation. So thermal is a big issue. And the second thing is a rocket is not a gentle transport vehicle, right? It's like shaking, it's like vibrating, it's like trying to put everything out of place. So what you need to do is you need to qualify your payload, but even then you're working with optics. And you saw how the crystals are placed and everything, right? Like you try your best, but if something moves, let's say one of the fiber moves, and that will mean that you are misaligned, right? So you have to think of ways. And one of the ways that we did was to have like a mirror that gives you an extra degree of freedom. So you can see if the beam has wandered from the center, then you could like try to position it. So those are the two challenges. Then the third challenge is radiation. So radiation like degrades your electronics, degrades your optics, degrades everything. And it's a technology demonstrator. The design life is around like 2 to 3 years, right? So now you have to make sure that you can commission the satellite, you can downlink the keys, you can prove the technology. And all of it, like, while not only trying to make sure that you can generate and send single photons, but also like battling this issue of the space environment, which is extremely harsh. And one thing to note for the astrophysicist, I think you will know that 2025, 2026 is like solar maximum, right? Which means that the radiation right now in space is a lot worse than it was. It's like 11-year cycle, and we're at the peak right now. So there are these kind of things that you need to anticipate. And one thing was that we would have launched in June, but then the launch broker, there were some issues, so we could not go in June, so we went only in November, right? Now, what that means is we actually went towards the maximum of the solar maximum, even though if we had flown a few months earlier, we would have avoided getting that much dose of radiation in such a short time. So these are the main problems. that come with a space mission. And I think for the next satellites, we'll probably go with a bigger platform, just because like thermal is easy. You can have like for vibration, you can add dampers. You can do a lot of things which are difficult in a CubeSat form factor. Does that answer the question?
Yes po. One last question. You have said po, if I'm not mistaken, that we cannot distribute the keys at the same time. No, we cannot distribute these keys at the same time. We need, if I'm not mistaken, to have a rotation around first. So I'm wondering if are there like solutions for this kind of stuff, or like absolutely no um revisions plans for now because of the I'm kind of wondering what kind of problem it stems for. Is it from the limits of the technology itself, or is it from the limits of the environment that's imposing on the technology?
So there is no limitation to distribute keys to two parties right now. I think what I was trying to say is that like if we were to distribute it from our orbit where we are right now, it would mean that, so for example, if you were to do the double distribution, right, the losses would not go from, it would be not 30 dB, but it would be around 60 dBs. So 40 is 10,000, 50 is 100,000, 60 is 1 million, right? So you'd have a million times more lossy connection. So what that means is like the amount of keys you would get are actually a lot less. And on top of that, the orbit that we are in, we don't see a lot of the Earth. So from a geostationary satellite, right, with three geostationary satellites, you can have complete global coverage at the same time. But if you're like, so let's think of like me trying to look at this glass, right? If I'm here, I only see inside. But if I'm here, I see also the table. So that's the same problem. So for example, we could have like downlink, double downlink on our current satellite. But then that would mean that I can only distribute keys between maybe Manila and Cebu, but not Manila and Singapore. So then I cannot communicate with Singapore. So in the first iteration, the idea is that the satellite is a trusted node. And then it's not a technology limitation, it's more of like the orbit selection limitation. And the reason we went with this approach is because the higher up you are, the since the losses tend to multiply or like grow exponentially, right? What you want to do is that you want to have a much bigger aperture on the telescope, on the satellite. You also need a much bigger telescope on the ground. And the costs of these are also like growing exponentially. So if you want to do technology demonstration, you probably want to find like, the sweet spot between what's technically feasible, what's commercially viable, and then like what makes sense, right? And I think that is the main decision driver for that. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Hello again, Sir Ishan Basyal. First of all, very nice talk. I'm kind of curious right now. I don't actually know if this will make sense with quantum, but how do you guys compute for the spacing or the distance between the satellites for quantum networks here on Earth? Is it similar with interferometry in astronomy, or is it more of like an optimization problem of quantum computing?
So you're asking how we compute the distance between the satellite or where we want to put the satellite, or
I mean, not the satellite on space, but the satellite receivers here on Earth.
so I think it's mostly driven by the needs of the network. So for example, like we have one node in Luxembourg where there is a fiber QKD network between Luxembourg and Belgium. And this goes between the data centers at European Space Agency and then a big data center in Luxembourg. And then we have one in Singapore. Right? So the idea is that like we are doing this because we see a commercial demand there. So, but then like if you're talking about interferometry, like we can do interferometry, but then we're not using polarization encoding. So if we wanted to do like a phase encoded QKD, then you would have interferometers just within the quantum receiver to differentiate between, let's say, the two encoded states. Does that answer your question?
Yes, actually that answers my question. Thank you. I have another question. It's more of like a curious question. um, you guys do use telescopes, right? But you kind of have these sensors attached to them, like quantum receivers. Um, I'm now curious as someone from astronomy, do you guys happen to try or use those telescopes to do or conduct some astronomical observations?
So we could do it, but we have not. And that's not because of any limitations, but just more of our time. Because to even talk to a satellite, right? So we have a wide field of view camera and a narrow field of view camera. So the way to understand it is the satellite is rising above a horizon, right? So to track the satellite, we use visual cues. So the satellite has a downlink beacon. Think of it as someone shining a torchlight in a forest, right? The torchlight is only as big, like the beam width is only as big. So if you're not within the beam width, you'll never see the torchlight, right? Does this make sense to everyone? So the satellite also needs to find the ground station. So there is also a camera on board the satellite. So or at least like a sensor that sees that like there's a peak of a certain signal at a certain wavelength, right? So on the ground, like we have two cameras. One sees the wide field of view, so you can see where the satellite is rising and where it is. Then once you have spotted the peak of that, then the telescope points to it and starts tracking it, right? And then we switch from the wide field of view to the narrow field of view camera. And the narrow field of view camera is needed because if you think about it, light takes some time to travel, right? And it also takes some time to process when you receive the light. But by the time you do that, the satellite is already moved. So your control loop might just like keep going crazy, right? It's like, oh, I found this, I'm moving here. So what we have is a fine steering mirror inside that can like adjust for the it's called point ahead, and like so what it means, it anticipates, okay, I've seen the satellite there, satellite is moving at this velocity, this is like a deterministic problem, right? So then you say, okay, I have to point here, so this is the mirror that is like very slight adjustments to always keep the peak of the center of the beam in the detector.
Okay. Am I correct in thinking this is also like adaptive optics?
So we have not done adaptive optics yet because we do polarization encoding at 800 nanometers, and our calculations said that turbulence would not be much of a big of an issue. So if we're doing like phase encoding, then adaptive optics would be an absolute must. But then for that, it also means like adaptive optics cost a lot of money. Then you also probably need to go with like nanowire detectors for phase encoding. So those are both cost increasing activities. So let's try with a simpler approach.
Thank you for that answer.
Hello, I'm just curious about the business side about the company, and I'm curious about how much does it cost to, in terms of the capital cost and the operational cost to create a quantum key, like everything generated, like how much does it cost to like get it up in the satellite capital wise, and then afterwards like operating wise.
So this is it's like I think the closest analogy would be like building software, right? So you build software, and then the more users you have, the cost keeps going down. So let's say you have one satellite, then like now the satellite can service 100 ground stations around the world, right? Or like even 1,000 ground stations. There's like no limitation how many you could solve. So if you have very few customers, then the cost is quite high. But if you have like if the service grows, then the cost keeps going down. And the lifetime of the satellite usually like the second one is around 5 years, which would mean that like let's say for 5 years the same satellite can keep producing keys. So yeah,
So it relies on the economies of scale.
economies of scale, yes. And then one of the things that we are also working, not sure if you got it from the slides, but with this company called SES, who are also building the European quantum satellite. What we're doing is we are building receivers so the ground station would be interoperable between their satellites and ours, not only the current ones, but also the future ones. What that would mean is that now they need need to construct another ground station. We could use the same resources.
Right. Okay. That's all. Thank
Yeah.
you. Hello. I have a question. Um, it's a bit different now from because we were discussing QKD from ground to satellite, right? So actually, I want to ask about is there any applications or like the feasibility for terrestrial, so like line of sight ground to ground station? Because as because I'm from ECE background, so communications, and am I correct? You mentioned also that the limitations of QKD is also like free space loss. Is it okay? So now ground to ground, so it's a bit shorter, but at least we have less loss to deal with. So like, is there any applications for this in the foreseeable future, or like, is it just more recommended to just do it via satellite?
No, so the QKD we do is space to ground, but you could also do ground to space. The difference is that, like, so maybe let me ask you a question back, right? Is vacuum more lossy than atmosphere, or is atmosphere more lossy?
Again,
So would you lose more of your signal in vacuum or in the atmosphere?
atmosphere.
Yeah. So the thing is that that's why, like, like what we think is, so for example, the losses in vacuum are minimal. So most of the losses that we get in our quantum signal actually come from the atmosphere as well, because you not only have interacting with particles, right? You're also interacting with like wind. You have like turbulence. You have like a lot of different things. So line of sight communication, you would be limited to a certain distance, just because like in space you are not losing very much because you're traveling in vacuum, versus here in atmosphere you are subject to many more loss introducing components. Yeah. So but then we have actually a product that we have tested in a few places. Even in Singapore, we continuously run experiments between like different buildings where we have like just optical line of sight quantum key distribution. We also have an active project where we create entangled photons. One goes through the fiber, the other goes through free space. So we're doing all of those. So yes, there is a future to answer your question for line of sight comps as well.
Thank you very much.
Hello, sir. While everyone is still forming their questions, I'm just curious about your personal journey into this field. So, what first sparked your interest in aerospace engineering and eventually led you into the field of quantum communications?
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the question. So for people that don't know, I'm originally from Nepal, not a spacefaring or a country known for its quantum experiments or anything in quantum, right? So the only thing that I can say is we're closer to space because of the Himalayas. We're at a higher altitude, so maybe a few kilometers higher than here. So my interest in space sparked, I think, around when I was fourth or fifth grade. Uh, my dad gave me a book that had the Apollo 11 mission, but time by time lapse. So it was like a big book where they had pictures. And then for me, I was like, okay, my eyesight is very poor. I actually wanted to become a pilot. And I was like, I think that's a foregone conclusion. I cannot be an astronaut, but maybe I can do something related to space. So that's where the journey started. And at the end of high school, I wanted to study aerospace engineering, but there were no options in Nepal. So I applied for at a few universities that would offer a good scholarship. So I managed to get one in Germany. So it was this university called International University Bremen. Still exists, but the company was quite generous. The idea was the university was quite generous. Idea was to have 75% international students from all over the world, and they would like give you a need blind admission scholarship. So the idea is need blind. Not sure how many people here know, but it's U.S. university concept. It's like it's need based or need blind. So need blind means if you get admitted and you say I cannot even pay one single dollar, the university will make sure that you get to attend the university. So the policy of the university was to have 75% international students, only 25% Germans. It was all taught in English. I somehow managed to get in. And then the university is now called Constructor University because during the pandemic, the foundation that was giving money to the university kind of ran out of money and pulled its hand. Then this company called Constructor Capital liked to have, let's say, they're building centers of excellence in Europe. And then they decided to take over the university, but then they also wanted to change the name. So the university is called Constructor University. And that's where I was for my undergrad. I did astrophysics and geology. And then I worked as a geologist for a year, but I realized maybe space is more interesting. So then I did my master's and then ended up working for a company in Luxembourg called SES and was moving around with them for a few places and worked in first in geostationary satellites. Then for the second part, I worked in medium Earth orbit satellites. And I think just for the people in the room, right? Like if you are thinking of a career in space, if you're thinking of a career in, let's say, quantum, sometimes like you face barriers like, okay, they will not allow a non-American person or a non-European person to participate. Right? I mean, you probably hear these things, but I think you should just apply because sometimes if you get lucky and if you get in, then they'll make sure that they find a way for you to get in. So don't be afraid to apply. That will be my only recommendation. And then I did that, and I was joking earlier today, right? There are two things that I hated while I was a student. In my undergrad, I hated quantum. In my master's, I hated like satellite telecommunications. And those are the two things that I've worked on since I graduated from my master's. Yeah. And sorry, the final question was about how I ended up in quantum, right? So at the end of the satellite program in the Mu satellites that we worked on for like almost over 5 years, I was looking to join a startup, and then that would have probably been in the US or in Europe. But then I just wanted to be close to family. So I ended up moving to this company in Singapore because they were doing one of the cool things that I had never worked on. So it was like a new challenge. Let's try something new and let's go closer to home.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask if we if the Philippines wanted to start their own QKD system, okay, where should we start? How much should we invest in? And yeah, those sort of questions.
Okay, yeah. Sorry for my ignorance, but I do not know how big of a talent pool you have for QKD because even our company, we're based in Singapore, where CQT has brought people from all over the world for the last 20 years, right? Like there's always talent coming into Singapore. But even for us to hire people that are domain experts in this field, we sometimes are short on talent. And that means that the company I work for, we're 30 people now, and there are only like 5 or 6 Singaporeans. So vast majority of us are just like non-Singaporeans that joined the company either from CQT or because there was no talent pool at CQT that had the expertise that had to be brought in from outside, right? So without knowing that, I cannot tell you how long it would take or how much it would cost. But the investment that has gone into QKD, I think Singapore so far has probably invested just in quantum tech, I think close to $600 million. And last year they said 400 million more for the next 3 years. I think it's Singapore dollars. Yeah. So it's close to $1 billion, right? Singapore dollars. Now the question is, still we're not, like we're still like fighting for talent. We're still fighting for resources. So the question would be that if Philippines were to embark on this journey, like I think one thing would be that so right now we're more open to like tech transfer or licensing or like helping other countries also work with quantum. And we have worked recently with like one or two players, like one or two countries where we're starting with the free space line of sight, then fiber QKD in the lab. And this you can start with like few $100,000 with like the kit, then you build the talent yourself. And if you have the tech transfer, then Philippines itself could be producing like the tech you need for the Philippines. So
question before we close our Q&A portion. Since you've said earlier that at some point you've hated the word quantum, what can you say about those students who are afraid of pursuing such big word?
I didn't say why I hated quantum. So maybe I'll start there, right? So in my undergrad, so we were second year of undergrad. So I think at the end of my high school, and I was still doing classical physics, I considered myself to be pretty decent in physics, right? But then I went to my undergrad, and there were like all these people that had been to Olympiads, like gold medalists and all of those. So I felt like I didn't have the foundations, and the professor was catering to these like, so we're 13 in the class, 11 were Olympiad people, and two of us were non-Olympiad people that thought were good in physics but probably didn't have the base, right? So the professor actually like accelerated through the course, and he finished the first semester in 3 months, and then he started with the second semester already in the first semester, and he finished the second semester in 2 months. So, but for me, everything moved so fast that I was like, okay, maybe like I don't want to do it ever again, right? So I think the question would be maybe you can find a support group, or maybe you can find like let's say tutors or someone that if you actually want to go into it, then you should do it. And I think sometimes you can hate the thing, but then you end up having to learn. So I think the last 4 years at SpeQtral, I've had like intensive coaching, what I missed in undergrad. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I think it's really important for us to look for people who share the same interest, like the quantum. Okay, thank you so much, Sir Ishan, for that deeply insightful presentation on breaching QKD and PQC. The intersections of physical layer security and advanced mathematical algorithms are truly fascinating. Thank you once again for our audience for those wonderful questions. And to formally express our deepest gratitude for tonight's incredible session, we would now like to present a token of our appreciation to our esteemed speaker. To help present this award, may I request the head of the Quantum Computing Society of the Philippines, Sir Bobby Corpus, to please join us here on stage. Okay, allow me to read the contents of the certificate. This certificate acknowledges that Mr. Ishan Basyal has been recognized for serving as a speaker in quantum safe communications, bridging QKD and post-quantum cryptography, held on June 4, 2026 at 26th floor Building F. Ortigas Jr. Road, San Antonio, Pasig 1605, Metro Manila. Signed by Mr. Bobby Corpus Jr., President of Quantum Computing Society of the Philippines, and Mr. Dom De Leon, Executive Director of DevCon. Let's give once again Mr. Ishan Basyal a huge round of applause.
Thanks everyone for
Okay, thank you once again to Sir Ishan for sharing such valuable insights with us this evening. And thank you as well to everyone who actively participated in the Q&A session. As we continue on to our program, we invite everyone to enjoy dinner and take this opportunity to connect with fellow participants, professionals, students, researchers, and members of the quantum technology community. Whether you are looking for opportunities in quantum computing, looking for potential collaborators, seeking career advice, or simply interested in exchanging ideas, we encourage you to introduce yourself and engage with the people around you. Please enjoy your meal, make new connections, and help us continue building a stronger and more vibrant quantum computing community. We'll reconvene in approximately 30 minutes for our closing remarks. Please follow our Logi team to give you the food and for instructions on giving the food. Thank you.
They have a first quantum mission roadmap that they are developing. And what we see in the room is that there is not just a lot of academics and scientists, but government representation, both locally from Cebu and the region, but Manila, the capital, and the government, and a lot of ambition to do authentic quantum technologies, not just try to copy what we in Europe or North America might be doing, but really finding their own place and way to do quantum. So very excited to be here. I hope to come back at some point, and looking forward to seeing what the Philippines will do in quantum.
I'm just so happy na our hard work for the past 7 months is paying off. So quantum computing kasi is, yung message kasi natin as a quantum computing society of the Philippines, quantum computing is open to everyone. No? It's not only the physics department, it's not only the math department, no? It's not only the computer science department, no? But everything, even business, all of it is. If you don't think one of them, the rest will be this quantum computer in the country, no? Will be a signal that we are going to be in an inflection point.
From islands bright to cities bold, we've written dreams in lines of code. 16 years we dared to dream, now we rise, a nation's team. Through every build, through every call, tech has paved the path for all. No one's left behind, we stand side by side across this land. Tech-empowered, hearts ignited, Filipinos all united. From the grassroots to the sky, we innovate, we amplify. This is our call for one, for all. Tech strong will never fall. Together we go. For the Philippines, it's our time. From classroom sparks to startups born, we've pushed through night, we greet the morn. Chapters rising, hands held high, building futures that touch the sky. AI, climate change we face, tech for good, we set the pace. From Luzon to Mindanao, we take the lead and we show how. Tech-empowered, hearts ignited, Filipinos all united. From the grassroots to the sky, we innovate, we amplify. This is our call for one, for Strong will never fall. Together we go. Together we climb. For the Philippines, it's our time. 15 years, one mission clear.
Hello po sa inyong lahat, our valued partners from DevCon, student leaders, women in IT, and everyone joining to celebrate the third anniversary of She is DevCon. In just 3 years, this initiative has empowered over 1,000 women across the country, from Pampanga, Legazpi, to Iloilo, Cebu, Bukidnon, and Iligan. That is impact. That is amazing. Sa BOI, Women Rules. Sa management committee po namin, we have 14 members, 9 of which are women. It really makes a difference because yung nurturing touch ng isang nanay can be felt in the way the programs and projects are managed. Iba talaga pag babae. May karinyo, may pag-aalaga. Now going back to She's DevCon, one of our partnership platforms with DevCon, it is clear that it is an example of how we can translate vision to action by opening doors for women in technology and ensuring that no one is left behind in the digital transformation. Globally, evidence shows that when women participate meaningfully in digital transformation, outcomes are more inclusive, innovative, and sustainable. With their involvement, they help ensure technologies reflect social realities and ethical considerations. However, despite progress, major gaps remain. Women hold a small share of senior digital and AI leadership roles, and many women exit tech careers before mid-career due to workplace culture, limited advancement pathways. Dito sa Pilipinas, relatively, we are tapped. Unlike in other countries where women still need to fight for equal opportunities in education and the workplace, Filipino women are empowered and treated equally. Basta may talino, may kakayahan, tiyaga, at diskarte. Now, as we celebrate Women's Month, I would like to invite the ladies out there, the young and the not so young anymore, to partake of She is DevCon's offer of tech learning opportunities. Claim your spot, own it, and show them what you're capable of. Women as we are, we take to heart the core principle of leaving no one behind. To us, it is not just a slogan. It is the strategy to make it happen. A caring, nurturing, and sustainable future for our children and the generations to come. With that, maraming salamat at congratulations to DevCon at sa lahat ng kapante at bumubuo ng She is DevCon.
My name is Pam Ross Deverillo. I am program director and founder, one of the founders of Quantum Kids. As a program director, I lead a group of volunteers, and we do code camps in many of our chapters in the country. So we have chapters in South Visayas and Mindanao. Throughout the year, we conduct code camps in our cities, specifically targeting those children who don't get computer science education in their schools. Yeah. What else do we do? We also train. So, yeah. So DEFCON Kids is all about computer science, education, literacy, literacy and equity for all children. We want everybody to have computer science literacy because we think that it is like reading and writing. It has to be everybody having that facility So when you read, you get to learn about other things. When you write, you get to express yourself. When you have computer science, you get to solve problems. So critical thinking, then
For good, we set the pace from loose lines of
early because, first of all, they're already in it. They are already using all of the tools that are based on computer science, so programming on. Now, they can use it forever and ever, but it would be so much better if they're able to create with code. So we want to transition them from being users to creators. Can you imagine kung naglalaro ka ng game and instead of just playing, you get to make your own game, di ba? Or instead of playing with a robot and remote controlling it, you are now making the robot do something. So it's a really different kind of engagement when you know the ins and outs.
Attacking power, future for all. Attacking power.
Yeah, and we have many, many roles. We actually have 5 teams. So you don't have to be a techie to join us. You can be a creative. You can be in the community engagement team. You can be in the people culture team. You can be in our sustainability or fundraising team. And lastly, you can be in our lead learners team. Yung lead learners, yung nag-lead talaga ng podcasts. And we have a few teachers with us, and we have many who are not teachers that have learned to teach with the tools that we have and the concepts that we want to do. So we are welcome. We welcome everybody, and here's the link to join.
Okay, well, everyone is still having their dinner. It is now my privilege to invite a leader who has continuously supported initiatives that advance quantum awareness and innovation in the Philippines. To share his reflections and final message for our community, please join me in welcoming Mr. Dom Delegon for the closing remarks. Let's give it up for Mr. Dom Delegon.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you, Sir Bobby and the rest of the team for organizing this. So it's a short reminder on why we do what we do. And yesterday I was in the AIBC conference. We were discussing about the AI talent gap. So maybe in a few years it's the quantum talent gap na yung topic natin. But I think again, nationwide, when you go to our chapters, right now today we're doing smart contracts for gaps. The interns and rest of the team are helping to R&D on open source AI right now. And now we're discussing the cut. So what do we discuss next year is genetic sequencing. And I guess the key point is the future is already here, but sometimes it's in the bubble. And it's not evenly distributed. And that's why we have the DevCon Philippines program, which is reaching 9 locations nationwide, from Iligan to Tacloban, Pampanga, and more. Legazpi and Iloilo and more. So we hope that you can help bring this nationwide, this discussion, this program, this support. And I wanted to end with sharing that while I cannot donate a quantum computer to Sir Bobby yet, what we can hopefully share is what we do with microbit and teaching kids. So I'll play a video from our founder of DevCon Kids on what we do today. On hopefully, ilang years from now, quantum talent, maybe in 10 or 15 years. These are the kids who are 9 to 15 years old today. And these are the things we're teaching them. And hopefully together, whether in the future, on how we can prepare quantum for kids, maybe that's something we can collaborate on. So I'll play a final video on what we do on DevCon Kids, and hopefully we can collaborate and bring this nationwide.
My name is Ross. I am program director and one of the founders of DevCon Kids. As a program director, I lead a group of volunteers, and we do code camps in many of our chapters in the country. So we have chapters in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Throughout the year, we conduct code camps in our cities, specifically targeting those children who don't get computer science education in their yeah. What else do we do? We also train. So yeah. So DEFCON Kids is all about computer science, education, literacy, equity, literacy and equity for all children. We want everybody to have computer science literacy because we think that it is like reading and writing. It has to be everybody having that facility. When you read, you get to learn about other things. When you write, you get to express yourself. When you have computer science, you get to solve problems. So critical thinking, very important. Early because, first of all, they're already in it. They are already using the tools that are based on computer science for programming on. Now, they can use it forever and ever, but it would be so much better if they're able to create with both. So we want to transition them from real users to creators. Can you imagine kung naglalaro ka ng game and instead of just playing, you get to make your own game, diba? Or instead of playing with a robot and remote controlling it, you are now making the robot do something. So it's a really different kind of engagement when you know the ins yeah, we have many roles. We actually have 5 teams. So you don't have to be a techie to join us. You can be a creative. You can be in the community engagement team. You can be in the people culture team. You can be in our sustainability and fundraising team. And lastly, you can be in our lead learners team. Yung lead learners, yung nag-lead talaga ng code camps. We have a few teachers with us, and we have many who are not teachers that have learned to teach with the tools that we have and the concepts that we want to do. So we are welcome. We welcome everybody, and here's the link to join. But not bad. Hands-on learning is so much more fun. Mas masaya siya, tapos mas engaging, diba? So it has to be hands-on, and also simply play is one of our tenets. We believe that you learn better when you play. When children are playing, they're learning many things. Cooperation, one of them, and of course there's more engagement, so there's more retention. So if you enjoy what you're doing, mas maganda yung labas ng experience. Favorite book. Just kidding. My favorite for many reasons. So the microbit is a small computer that was developed specifically for children to teach and learn with. It was developed in the UK, and all of their 4th graders at that time, I want to say 2016, had got a microbit. I know, so the government believes in that. So it's a really small tool. It has a variety of sensors. It has a variety of outputs also. The children can code with it easily with block coding. So you have input and output within that small device, but not too far away from the basics. You can easily attach external components to it, like motors or other sensors. You can expand your creative coding project. So the project, instead of just living in your computer, now has a physical representation. So then it becomes a physical computing project. How much more fun would that be when you have something you can touch and you can manipulate na ginawa mo, diba? Ikaw pa nag-code. So the micro is really and easily affordable. So I believe, and my team believes that it's a great intro coding activity for a lot of our schools. So we should start using more of that. For the Philippines. So our AI started with our code. Our code is a global movement to get all children exposed to computer science. This is started by 2 brothers I want to say 12 years ago now. So it has been a global movement, including 180 countries. Every December, all the children get to do a coding activity from their website. So ngayon, it's really telling us that they have changed our book to Hour of AI. So Hour of AI na siya this year. They said that they're transitioning on over. So Hour of AI, therefore, will be another global celebration where everybody gets to do coding activities on AI, artificial intelligence. And that tells you how critically important AI is for our world right now and coming soon or in the future. Right now, there's so much to learn about it, and not just to learn how to code it, how to make it come through, but how to make it come to reality, but also how to think about it in an ethical way and also in a safe way. And so that it teaches the kids to think critically about the tools that they're using that include AI.
For the Philippines. Now,
So that's DevCon Kids. Again, you can reach out to Virgin if you have questions about DevCon Kids. If you're from outside Manila, reach out to one of our programs. And thank you for attending today. Maybe we can have a group photo up front as our documentation for today. So again, congratulations to everyone and thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Nicker, for hosting our event. We have this things until late. So let's have a group photo, everyone. You can flash na lang yung event poster.